Good afternoon, all of you. I'm really delighted and honored to be part of this international seminar in Newman College. I thank all the department, the teachers, especially the Sona for this invitation. And I'm really fortunate that so much young students, young researchers, PG and PG students are here. So my topic today is democratic cultural politics of difference in the context. Generally, we talk about cultural studies, and we talk about cultural studies in a global kind of perspective. So my concern here is how to indigenize this universal or global discourse of cultural studies in the context, in the peculiar socio-political and cultural context and locations in the regionality of India and even in Kerala. So, in order to come to that question of indigenization or nativization of this discipline or multidisciplinary kind of a formation. This is not exactly a rigid discipline as we know, because nowadays in the UG and also in PG and in PhD courseworks we are teaching cultural studies. In almost all the universities in South Asia, all over the world, we are teaching. The academic community is now engaged with cultural studies in detailed ways. It is part of our pedagogy and also the philosophy of education. But unfortunately, we imbibe this tradition as a given tradition, and also we limit this tradition or this innovative kind of new kind of experimentation or improvisation. We limit it most of the time. So, in order to liberate this new developing field, in order to understand the multidisciplinary kind of accent on this particular new kind of undiscipline, it's an indiscipline or an undiscipline that you find in cultural studies. This is often talked about cultural studies. This is a pluralistic and polyphonic and multidisciplinary and transdisciplinary. Multidisciplinary in the sense that it is interdisciplinary, it uses the insights from various disciplines. It involves various kind of data and various theoretical and methodological kind of perspectives from many disciplines. And also it slightly transforms, it subverts the kind of normative kind of notions on language, on disciplines itself, on the humanities, on knowledge. You were discussing about reformulations of knowledge and reality and truth. So new forms of knowledge or the foundations of knowledge and the realizations or the acknowledgement of knowledge and truth and reality. These things are also questioned and challenged and reformulated and refigurated and revalidated in this new discipline or this undiscipline of cultural studies. So in the European origin, as we know, we all study the history of cultural studies. It's a post-Second World War phenomenon, and it developed in the British academia, especially in the Birmingham School of the Birmingham Contemporary Cultural Studies School or Center for Contemporary Cultural Studies, CCS at Birmingham University in Britain. In the 1960s, early 1960s, we know Richard Hogarth, the author of Uses of Literacy, and Raymond Williams, the author of Culture and Society, Keywords in Culture, The Long Revolution, etc. And also you find E.P. Thompson, historian, a working class historian, E.P. Thompson, also contributing to the development of the institutionalization and the development of an academic field of interdisciplinary kind of quest, knowledge quest called cultural studies. So in the 1960s, it was founded by that Center for Contemporary Cultural Studies was institutionally founded by Richard Hogarth, and later from the middle part of the 1960s onwards, it was a student, Stuart Hall, a Jamaican intellectual, a black or Afro-Caribbean, later became British citizen. So Stuart Hall became the leader or the director of that particular institution at Birmingham, and he pioneered the studies on class issues, race issues in particular, in the 1970s in Britain. So it is in the Birmingham School of Cultural Studies, in the British foundation, that you find a kind of digression of the old Marxist school into a neo kind of Marxist kind of analysis of culture and society. So you find a Gramscian turn in Marxism, a cultural turn, otherwise called a cultural turn in Marxism, according to Grossberg and Carey Nelson and others. They have written about that cultural turn in Marxism. So a new interest in what you call the so-called superstructural elements, the societal elements, the ideological elements, and the cultural elements, the superstructural elements of religion, that of race, that of gender, that of sexuality, that of language, that of ethnicity, region, all these cultural kind of parameters and superstructural elements became very prominent. Or these cultural elements were seen as fundamental in analyzing every society and every culture or every polity. So before that, it was the kind of orthodox Marxism that was prevalent, which is the base and superstructure Marxism. The base, that is economic base, determined everything. That was the consideration, that was the fundamental tenet of the old orthodox Marxism. That is why it is called base and superstructure Marxism. If you control the economic base, or if you change the economic base, you can change the society, you can change the superstructure as well. That was the concept. So, but with Gramsci, and also before that with Althusser, an interest in structuralism and structuralist Marxism, the French philosopher Althusser, Louis Althusser, he actually elaborated about the importance of ideology and the ideological apparatuses of the state. And it is Antonio Gramsci, when his writing was available only in the 1950s, he passed away in the 1940s in the fascist prison house of Benito Mussolini, we know. But fortunately, his prison notebooks, it was smuggled out of jail, and it appeared in modern Italian language. And later, it was in the 1950s only, it was translated into English language and French language and other world languages, Spanish and German and all. So when it became available, it has revolutionized. In the 50s, it has revolutionized in the post-Second World War context. It revolutionized the thought and political philosophy of Europe and the whole world thereafter by addressing some of the deeper issues of society and traditional cultures. So it is Antonio Gramsci's idea of traditional culture and cultural hegemony, the orthodox culture or the traditional culture of a society becoming hegemonic, the notion of hegemony or hegemony by Antonio Gramsci, and his idea of the people undermined in hegemony, or the people subjected to this consensual rule of dominant culture in a society, and that rule by consent, he defined it as hegemony or hegemony. So the people who are undermined, who are suppressed by these traditional orthodox cultures, the patriarchal cultures, the religious orthodoxies, the other forms of conservatisms in society. So all these things undermine the people and subordinate the people and subjugate the people. And it is rendered as given and normal and natural to a society because it operates through the ideological apparatuses of the state and also of the dominant orders of the society, the order of things. Michel Foucault would say about the disciplining and punishing in the society. The birth of the prison or the birth of the military, the birth of the clinic or other institutionalized forms of sexuality. We know about the histories of sexuality that Foucault has also elaborated. So, according to Antonio Gramsci, this traditional culture undermines the people and it subjugates the people, but they cannot question it because it is given as normal and natural and normative. It is regularized, naturalized as normative. As a traditional culture, this is taught and conditioned as something traditional and what is part of your inheritance and legacy and heritage and tradition and even as religion. This is normalized and regularized as religion in a society and therefore you cannot question it. And it is often a denial of voice and agency to the people. It is the lack of representation that is imposed upon the people that becomes the so-called fascism. Fascism is coming back to power because it denies the agency and voice of the people. It denies just an adequate representation to the people. Their voices are not heard. Their representations are being subverted and they lack voice. They cannot question it. They cannot overthrow this dominance, this cultural, social practice and habit of hegemony. And therefore they are subjected to it and it is a complicit. So even the victims are complicit to this hegemonic power in society and even the victims cannot question and challenge and overthrow it. That is why fascism is coming to power. It is normalized and regularized as culture, as given, as normal, as religion, so on and so forth. That is the Gramsci analyzed Italian society. Italian society, why the fascists, Mussolini and others are coming to power? Why Adolf Hitler and the Nazis are coming to power in Germany and many parts of Europe? He addressed that question and he also answered that question by saying that it is a hegemonic force because the people are also complicit. Even the victims are complicit in it. It is part of a conspiratorial rule, a majoritarian or a pseudo-majoritarian kind of rule because it is actually the rule of the oligarchy. He defined it in Italian history. That is the keyword along with hegemony and the people who are subjugated by hegemony, he called them the subaltern, using a metaphor or a word from the military register, a downgraded kind of a soldier, a foot soldier, subaltern. That means the down under, the other who is undermined, that is the subaltern. So this question of hegemony, this question of fascism coming to power and why the people are electing the fascists into power and why the people cannot resist fascism, which is an absolute denial of their very existence, their humanity, their equality, their liberty, their fraternity, everything. And a rule by consent. This is a rule by consent because it is normalized and regularized and even paraded and imposed as religion in a society. So he used the term oligarchy in the context of Italian history. It is the feudatories who are coming to power again and again. It is not the people, the working classes. It is not the unorganized workers. It is not the minorities, it is not women, it is not other challenged sections or weaker sections of the society who are given voice and agency and a just share in their power. They are denied their just and equal representation, adequate representation, and therefore they cannot overthrow this power. They become mere subjects, they become complicit. So This question of cultural hegemony, this notion of the oligarchy, the rule of the few elites, that is what oligarchy is all about. The rule of a few chosen elites in society. In the Italian history, it is the feudatories, the old feudatories, the feudal lords coming to power again and again, and they are creating the mascot of the fascists, Benito Mussolini, as the chancellor or as the leader or the president. So this question, in the context of India, it was addressed by none other than the chief architect of our constitution, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar himself. So Ambedkar in the 1920s, when he was preparing for the roundtable conferences, it began from early 1930s onwards with the British imperial kind of administration. They were trying to hand over power to the locals in India. But at the wake of that, what you call a post-colonial discourse itself, or the anti-colonial struggle itself, people like Ambedkar, even before him, he considered Mahatma Jyotiba Phule as one of his masters. The Buddha, Kabir, and Phule, they are my masters. He acknowledged that. So even before Ambedkar, in the 19th century itself, when Phule, he began in the schools, Phule and Savitribai and Fatima Sheikh and Mr. Sheikh, Usman Sheikh and Fatima Sheikh and Phule's, when they began the schools for the untouchables and girls, because in India, people were not given education, people were even denied the art of letters. We know about the regime of Manusmriti, as in the Italian history, the feudatories were, the caste feudalism was ruling in India. So people were denied education, and it is the Phules who began the first schools for the Shudras and Atishudras, the Dalits and the Bahujans, and women and the Shudras. So Ambedkar acknowledged the contributions of Phule in 19th century. Satyashodhak Samaj, his writing of the Sarvajanik Satya Dharma Pustak, and also his schools and his critique of nationalism. Phule's critique of nationalism, that is the lasting kind of critique that even today it holds. Even today, that criticism of Jyotiba Phule of the kind of ultra-Brahminical kind of nationalism that began in the 19th century, in Bengal in particular, in Aurobindo, in Bankim Chandra's Vande Mataram kind of nationalism, or in Vivekananda's what you call the Shivoham kind of Hindu kind of nationalism. That kind of nationalism was actually a kind of ultra-nationalism. It was an otherizing nationalism. It viewed the minorities as the other, especially the Muslim as the other. So that is what you find in the Vande Mataram notion of the Bengal Renaissance. And that was completely rejected and date. Even the Maharashtrian nationalism that was led by Tilak and Patel and later in Gujarat by Gandhi, that was also completely criticized and rejected by Phule in 19th century. He appealed to his followers, the Satyashodhak Samaj people, Savitribai and Fatima Sheikh and others. He appealed them all to deviate from this, what you call the meta-narrative of this Hindu Brahminical nationalism. It is going to be an arising nationalism. If the caste Hindus are gaining power, if the British imperial forces are retreating, or if they decolonize, what will happen? It will happen one day that power is directly transformed to the elites in India, the oligarchy in India will come to power. So this criticism was raised by Phule himself, but the very term oligarchy was used by Baba Saheb Ambedkar in the 1920s, towards the end of the 1920s, when he was preparing a kind of legal constitutional draft for India that was validated only in 1950, that came to kind of ratification only in the 1950s, but he was drafting it from the 1920s onwards. Soon after his education at Columbia, when he returned from Columbia University and also from LSE in London, he was trying to draft this, and he was trying to go and meet the British administration, the imperial forces, and negotiate this exchange of power. This transfer of power must be a just kind of transfer. Otherwise, it will go directly to the Indian elites. It will go to the caste Hindu forces, the forces of Manusmriti, the forces of this Rigvedic Purusha Sutta, where this Chaturnya system is enshrined. It is enshrined in the mandala called Purusha Sutta, the 10th mandala of the Rig Veda, the earliest Veda, which is claimed to be created in the BC 1500 era, which is called the Vedic age by Brahmanical and Vedic forces. There are no what you call epigraphic or archaeological evidences for that. But still, that is the claim that there was a Vedic age in India. Soon after the decline of the Indus Valley civilization around BC, that means before Jesus, almost 1515 centuries before Jesus. That is the claim. So anyway, from that decline of the Indus Valley civilization, which was predominantly a Dravidian kind of copper-based civilization, from the advent of the Aryan Vedic forces in India, in the northern Indus Valley plains and the Gangetic plains later, and India is having that name, we are having the name India, the people of India, that is Bharat. Later, that was adopted as Bharat. Now, even that very name of India that we got from that Indus Valley civilization, the name of the river, even that is being challenged and that is being altered now. Unfortunate kind of conditions. If the people forget their own history, if the people are not partisan in the what you call the socio-political struggles and the struggles for democracy, if we forget it, everything will happen. It will be on our doorsteps. That is the unfortunate case in India. So Ambedkar, in the 1920s, when he drafted that constitution for the roundtable conferences, he used the term oligarchy. Oligarchy means the rule of the elites, a few chosen elites. It's not the rule of the people. They're supposed to be a democracy. All the civilized modern states in the whole world, they're claiming to be democracies. None of them are claiming to be an anarchy, which is the rule of a single monarch, or a kind of what you call a mobocracy or a meritocracy. No modern democratic country claims to be a democracy, claims to be a mobocracy or a meritocracy. They are all claiming to be what we call democracies. So democracy is actually the rule of the people. It is not exactly the rule of a few elites. So people must get their representative form of government. People must get their voices and their representations. They need due and adequate representation in governments. Only when power is shared, only when they can have the share in power, in administration, in politics, in decision making, only when their voices are heard and they are given their just and new democratic shares and spaces, they experience freedom, they experience what we call equality, and they have naturally they develop a kind of fraternity. So that is denied, and it is the power is concentrated in a few elites in India. Exactly in the case as in the case of early 20th century Italian history, when Antonio Gramsci also used that keyword oligarchy to criticize the rule of a few chosen elites. So anyway, the point that I am, what is this? This term? Oligarchy. And I was also elaborating about the same condition in India that was addressed in early 20th century by Chief Architect of Indian Constitution, B.R. Ambedkar. Ambedkar also used the same word, oligarchy, to refer to the rule of the elites, the caste Hindu elites in particular. Because traditionally, from this Vedic age onwards, at least from BC 1500 onwards, that means now almost 3,500 years from now, So for this last 3,000 years or more, India was ruled by the elites. India was ruled by this oligarchy of caste into forces. And that has consolidated in the idea of the Hindu Rashtra. You have various versions of it. And the 100th anniversary is coming in 2025. It is going to be the 100th anniversary of the RSS and the Hindu Rashtra project. So all these things, the change in the name of India, India is now being obliterated. All India Radio is no more. It's already dead and gone. There is no All India Radio now. We have only Akashvani. So it has vanished into thin air. So likewise, India can also vanish into thin air. And Bharat is already there. So what is Bharat? Whose nation it is? Whose nation it is after all? That is the question that the Indians must ask. The Indian student is supposed to ask. So we got to given by the people from the West Asia in particular. The Persians and the Arabs, it's an Arabic and Persian term. It's not even a Sanskrit or a Prakrit term from India. Its etymology, its root is in Arabia, in Persia. It is a Persian Arab name given by the Persians and the Arabs. Al-Hind, Hindu Kush, and Al-Hind and all. So they couldn't pronounce Hindu, so they called it Hindu, and that is why this name. So even the name of this religion, or even the name of India, was given by the foreigners, other people from various other parts of western parts of the world, West Asia. So my point is that Ambedkar in the 1920s, when he talked about this issue of oligarchy, of a few chosen people, the caste Hindu elites ruling the world, ruling India, and denying the just and adequate representation, the due representation of the people. And therefore fascism is coming again and again. Here also in the form of Hindu nationalism, in the form of this Hindu Rashtra project, in the form of various other things we know about the kind of treatment of the Dalits and minorities, what is happening in various parts of India and also within Kerala, what is happening. Even caste killings are happening, even in Kerala, which boasts about this renaissance and modernity and many other social reforms or missionary kind of traditions or Nada revolts, Nada women's struggles. This is the 200th anniversary of the breastplate struggles of Nada women in Kerala, which was a direct outcome of the Christian missionary intervention in Nanjinad in South. So, despite having all these traditions, the Nada women's struggle, the Narayana Guru movement, Mahatma Iyengar's struggles for social justice and education, and the creation of a public space in Kerala, Brigade Appachan and various other social reformers in Kerala, we are having backlashes and counter revolutions in Kerala. In the last decade or so, after the Hindu Nationalist Party has come to power, at the center in Kerala also there was a resurgence of this kind of oligarchic nationalist kind of jingoism, and we witnessed that riots at Shabarimala. The riots at Shabarimala. There was a Supreme Court verdict in 2018 that women of all ages, if they are Indian citizens, women of all ages, young women, any Indian citizen, they can enter into a public place. If a worshipping place is a public space, any Indian citizen can enter. We can all go to the churches, we can go to the mosques, we can go to the synagogues and the gurudwaras and all. We are all welcome there, irrespective of the caste or the religion or the gender or sexuality or region or language, whatever it is, we are all welcome. They are all public spaces of worship. Public space of worship must be like that. But in the Hindu temple, which is dominated by the oligarchy, the caste Hindu forces, women of certain ages, they cannot go. Or in Shabarimala, women cannot, young women cannot. So there was a long pending kind of decision verdict on that in 2018. The constitutional bench of the Supreme Court of India, it has given the verdict that women are Indian citizens and therefore the grown-up women, they can go to any public space of worship if a worshipping place is a public space. And that was a unanimous decision. It's extremely difficult to get when the Hindu nationalist party is ruling. It is extremely difficult to get such a verdict from the Supreme Court of India. And Kerala also, Kerala Chief Minister, he tried to actually validate and implement that Supreme Court verdict. And unfortunately, some people, they went out in the streets and they created something called the believers' riots, the Vishwasi Lahar.